I very frequently talk with people about feeling like they have no direction in life, and they will point to people such as yourself and be like, look what they did with their life, and I'm doing nothing, and it's just wasting. And is there anything that you would say to people who they look to you and as successful to them, and they feel like they're just wasting their lives because they've not done what you've done?
Well, that's interesting because I the grass is always greener, right? I look at what I'm doing and I feel like I am wasting. I have people that I look to that are doing so much what I feel like is so much more or so much better or so much like what am I doing? I'm making YouTube videos about the topics. It doesn't feel like a lot. So that's always going to happen. You're always going to think that someone else is doing something more important. The other part of that, of course, is I used to think that my value came from being created in the image of God. So when that goes away, you have to come up with, well, what value is there in my life? And it took me a while to learn that it also wasn't in the value doesn't come from being productive and the value doesn't come from what other people think because that's fleeting and out of your own control. And especially
Yeah.
part of like when I got cancer, I used to have my self-esteem largely on what can I accomplish. But if you need to take a couple of years out of your life to fight a disease, you sure don't feel like you're accomplishing anything.
Yeah.
And then so for someone like me, that was very devastating, right? Because my whole identity was, well, like I worked on Star Wars, right? Like
Yes.
that was my identity. Well, you take that away, what am I? So going back to what I was talking about before, it's when you come to realize, well, we all get one life. When you realize that that's all there
Mhm.
is, and the number of days you get is the number of days you get. Then it became more of, oh, the value is in having this experience primarily. And then also, if you so choose, and there's no obligation to so choose, what do I want to pour back to help other people's experiences? Right. And so
Yeah.
unfortunately, I feel like sometimes we maybe even put too much emphasis on that you owe it to other people to pour back. You don't actually owe it to other people to pour back, but there is a reward in doing that. So it's if you do it is actually selfish in its own way, right? Like so for me, one of the things I wish someone had done this for me when I was younger. No one did. So I actually get a if someone comes across my channel and it helps them figure things out that feels good to me. It is its own reward. So that's one way to get a reward. But hiking up atop of a mountain by myself is also its own reward. But what did that do for anybody else? Nothing. It didn't do
Right.
anything for anyone else. It wasn't productive. So you got to find in your own way of doing things. I would say it's productivity isn't the be all and end all. Contribution to society is not measured. There's no metric for it. And let's say you're the mother of one child. None of us are here are mothers. Who's going to say pouring their entire life into that one child is less productive than someone who speaks to 1,000 people a week? Is that less
Oh,
productive?
for
No.
sure. Yeah,
It's
I
just a
I
choice, right?
totally see that, yeah.
But comparison is the easiest thing to do and the easiest way to feel terrible. And it is something I still struggle with. I struggle with it a lot, comparing lives, and there's just not a lot good that comes from it. So stop comparing, and basically what I try and deal with it is, am I happier with myself today than I was yesterday? And if so, that's a win.
Well, in the same
And if
vein, if
yep,
is there a piece of advice that you would give your younger self if you could?
depends on how long I have to talk to that person because that person would have not really listened well. But I mean, I would love to have that person not trust authority if I could get them
Mm,
to do because then I think that young Paul would have, if he could have just stopped trusting everything that everyone told them as true, could have figured this stuff out sooner on his own. Because obviously I was able to figure it out later. So, but I was so
yeah.
just willing to. My pastor studied all this and he knows it's true. So why am I going to bother? Right. So that would be the message from young self. If I had more time, I would probably go into more detail, but it would essentially come down to that.
Well, thank you so much. You
You're
you really
welcome.
expounded on, I mean, very concisely. Thank you.